to follow on that. I mean, what I think is really interesting is that if you take a look at the various models that exist, it's almost incredibly obvious, but might take some unpacking, that by picking a standardized identity managed solution, you're going to decrease your deployment costs and development costs for a small social media startup. So we're talking not necessarily a giant behemoth enterprise, but it significantly decreases the costs for deploying something when I'm not having to build an entire management solution for all of my accounts of everybody. I'm going to be a relying party on somebody who's OpenID. So I'm going to just build that and I'm going to roll it. So there's some costs there. But then what we're finding as part of the data portability project's legal stuff that we're looking into with the EULA and TOS is that there's also significant savings in liability costs. So it's not necessarily you're going to be making more money. Everybody's going to make more money if you deploy against IDM. In fact, you're potentially going to be saving your bacon in a lawsuit. So on the one hand, you have the ability to do a lot more interesting mashups of technologies. So you can light up, in fact, I think AOL just did something really interesting with a lot of social technologies tying in together a music site. I can't remember, it was like country music site or something. And also making a lot of money, ancillary money, off of various opportunities that they were tying together. So you can imagine a scenario where someone can have an idea, light it up relatively easily as a relying party, assuming some type of attribute exchange or assertions or something where you can pass back and forth preferencing information. And then turn that around to hand off to a fulfillment agency for the sale of whatever products you're an affiliate of. So you get a little penny here and a penny there. You can see that by selecting the same standards that your compatriots are, joining a circle of trust so that you can actually rely on the people whose attributes you're sharing, and you'll see that a business case can be made for decreasing your costs, and potentially making a little bit more off to the side. Small, we're talking small, not big numbers, but it's measurable.
Quick point. And that exact point that Trent made is why standards are so very important. Because smaller companies can react much more nimbly with innovative, clever ideas that are perhaps below the radar of the behemoths, but they prove the point, right? And the $50,000 income to a smaller company is a lot of money to a smaller company. If we've got a standards-based layer that respects not only the technology, but is a way of sharing attributes about this identity, the assurance level, the privacy level, the privacy requirements, that makes it much easier for 1,000 flowers to bloom and for the industry to grow. That's why standards are so important in this space, to level the playing field and to let a lot of players come up with innovative ideas and let those ideas grow.
Paul, quick question on how's this, so about information cards, we've been largely seeing some vendor-specific technologies that are really tied to the desktop. How do you move beyond that concept that you've got card space just running on your desktop only, right? How do you move beyond that limitation and allow multiple players to be brought into this trust network?
Well, you're asking how do you move beyond just the lock-in of card space into Windows? Is that what you mean?
Or just something that's a card selector that's pretty tied to a certain technology.
Right. Well, I got kind of into this whole game by starting this Higgins project, which is a collaborative effort to build an open source selector, and we have put huge effort into Roger's open layer that he's referring to, and feel that it is necessary in order to prevent commercial enclosure of the ecosystem. Microsoft, good, bad, or otherwise, has to have counterweights, and we think open source is the best way to keep things open. Open source plus open standards. Actually, if anything, open standards are more important than the open source. But we think that that the message is starting to get through. It's funny, when I go to Europe, the main thing I have to do is explain that Microsoft doesn't own the information card technology. And I figure if I keep going over there, in a couple of years, people might believe me. So this is a strange industry where the reality is in advance of the perception. We do have open standards. Everyone on this panel is talking about open technologies, open standards, multiple reference implementations. That isn't our problem, even if the perception is otherwise. That's actually not the problem.
Okay, great.
So I think 1,000 flowers bloom is what you're starting to see happen just now.
Okay. Before we open it up for audience questions, I'd like to, again, go through our panel here and ask each of you, what do you see the top 3 trends shaping the future? Where do you see the federated digital identities moving towards? What trends will be shaping the future in the next 2 to 3 years?
3 from each of us.
Yeah.
So I would say, I'll just list at least my number 1, and that is the convergence of social and business networks as we've been describing here. I think that for whatever reason, we have tended to have 2 different environments, but increasingly businesses that I speak with that are members of Liberty Alliance and who have expressed their opinions there are hearing about the need to converge a Plaxo and a Facebook environment and a Wiki environment into their day-to-day business action, right? So that I see this convergence of the social and the business network, not meaning there's one protocol that's going to solve that problem, but that the casual relationship that a user has with an application can migrate gradually into a highly secure application like a financial services application, so that that same persona can be carried between those environments. That is a need. I see that as a major opportunity for convergence. And as we've all said, it ain't just about technology. It's about the business policies. It's about the levels of assurance. It's about the privacy, the user privacy issues that need to be addressed. So that's the major trend that I would submit.
Eric?
So just to bring that home with a specific example, I was mentioning before that we do a lot of work with Plaxo with some of these technologies so that a user can make some of their information available to Plaxo without giving Plaxo their Gmail username and password. Well, as we've started to do that, there are a lot of companies, schools, ISPs who outsource their email services to Google. And as they've heard us doing this Plaxo, they come along and say, well, Google, you're already hosting Monday address books on behalf of my employees. Why can't you do the same thing for me? And in fact, they push us a little bit further. And they say, I as an enterprise, I've invested in some stronger authentication, whether it's info cards or RSA tokens or something like that. And they say, Eric, Google already acts as a SAML relying party to me, so I can handle authenticating my employees. You all have this relationship with Google, and you have my employees' address books. Why can't you act as a bridge between us? Why can't one of my employees go to Plaxo, say I'm Jack at company XYZ, get redirected to Google, who redirects to their SAML IDP, redirects to their InfoCard authentication system, and change back from InfoCard to SAML, to OpenID, to OAuth, back to Plaxo to make this information available. And we've already shown technically that we can do this today. Again, a lot of the hard parts are more about awareness and the user experience aspects of it.